Tigard, thank you for joining me tonight. I want to provide you with a couple of updates. And while I'm doing that, I want to ask you to start submitting your questions in the chat box. Make sure we have a robust two-way dialogue tonight. I can't believe as I reflect on this, it's been 14 months that we've been doing Fireside chats via Facebook Live and on social media. I still look forward to a day when we can be in person together again, but I have a feeling we'll continue doing some of these via social media in the future, just because we get so much engagement and get the voice from many others heard that normally don't or aren't able to participate. So here are my reminders. First of all, Election Day is May 18th. Don't forget to vote. Starting today, you can in-person drop-off is recommended to make sure that your vote actually gets counted. And the city has a drop box located in our parking lot. So I would strongly encourage you to vote and use the drop box. You'll notice that there is a ballot measure about urban renewal in the downtown Tigard City Center. And I would strongly encourage you to vote yes on that ballot measure. If you have more questions about urban renewal or what that's all about, there is very good information in the voter's guide, voter's pamphlet. And then there's also a letter in the Tigard Times and in Tigard Life that was written by your entire city council. And we would encourage you to review that content. I also want to let you know about Move for May. Move for May is ongoing. It's about taking care of ourselves by staying active outdoors or at home. And each week, participants can choose to complete one or more of the activities on our website, including a bike scavenger hunt, neighborhood bingo, story walk at the library, and Tigard Park adventures. And you can track your activity, and you could win prizes from local businesses and even a scooter. So take a look. The place to find that information is at www.engage.tigard.gov/move4may, and the 4 is the number 4. Also want to ask for your continued sharing of input on our future parks and recreation programs. Every 10 years, the city creates a roadmap that we call our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And that plan sets a vision for the future of our parks and recreation in Tigard and recommends investments the city can make to achieve our shared community's vision. Last summer, you told us what projects and recreation programs are most important to you. Now help us prioritize. What should we be doing first? And you can take the survey by clicking on the link in the chat box on this Facebook Live. So I hope that we are getting some questions in right now. We've got a question that was sent in before we went live. And the question is, my son Sam and I have a question for Mayor Snyder. Do you have a plan to eradicate the invasive Nutria in Phano Creek? So here is some information about Nutria in Tigard and how we as a city manage them. So first of all, Nutria are an invasive species, so that's the first thing I can tell you. In our area, they're an invasive species. They cause a number of problems, one by competing for habitat with beavers, and they procreate at twice the rate of beavers, so that's a problem. They also damage the sides of streams, so stream banks, and cause problems there in creeks and streams. And that is destructive and problematic and contributes to runoff and other kinds of problems in the stream, destabilizing the stream and creek banks. They also put their excrement in the, I'm trying to think about how to say this nicely, but not sure there's a nice way. So they poop in the creeks and streams, and that causes a rise in fecal bacteria levels. So for all of those reasons, we do have an active nutria trapping program. We live trap them, and that is something that's been happening for more than a decade in Tigard to try to manage that invasive species. So hopefully that helps cover that question, and we'll move on to another one. So we have a question from, and perhaps comments from Cindy. Cindy says, I have lived in Tigard now for over 20 years. I love it here, but now I have noticed homeless tents showing up off of 217 and Highway 99 on the back side of the storage unit. There also is a tent on the corner of I-5 where you take the exit to go to Lowe's. It is under a fir tree on the right side where you turn right to go to Lowe's on 72nd. It's the wedge between the turnoff and the street. I called the Tigard police on the one by the storage unit and nothing was done. I do not want Tigard to look like Portland with tents, trash, graffiti. Please do something to keep our town clean. So the first thing I want to say is I've been aware of the situation actually from other residents at 99W and the 217. And while it may appear like nothing was done in the short term, that's not what I would call an accurate portrayal. We actually had just worked with ODOT, who owns that right-of-way, the Oregon Department of Transportation, to clear the other side of the 217 and 99W. And we then worked to clear the other side. These are things that require, there's a process we have to go through. We can't just show up, rip people's tents down. They have rights. And actually there's been 2 cases litigated that have made it all the way up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the U.S. federal court right before the Supreme Court. And in the last couple of years, one from the city of Boise and the other from the city of Grants Pass. And both of those decisions provide binding requirements and direction to all government entities about how they can manage and or handle homeless individuals. And those were specific to homeless camping, homeless occupation of public spaces, etc. So I would just share that it's a lot more complicated than you just calling Tigard PD and expecting an hour later for it to just be gone and taken care of. So with that said, I will also say more broadly to the questions about homelessness that were raised by Cindy, is that the city is working, we have taken notice too that things are changing to some extent and in Tigard, and that we are seeing more impacts from homelessness within the city, and we're wanting to work to address that. And we actually set in our council goals for the next 2 years in the last couple months just to do that and to take a more bold look at actions that we can take that will support our homeless residents. And we want to support them. We want to get them help. We want to get them housed. And all that takes connecting them to resources and solving problems. And also affordable housing has a place to play in that. So we're working in all those spaces, and I'd be happy to talk about it more if people have more questions. So let's see. I don't know who this is from, but I'm sorry. So we have a question from Gwen about how do I sign up for Code Red emergency alerts. I am confident that we can get you a link in the chat right now that will allow you to sign up for the Code Red emergency alerts. So that can be done on a link that we will send you. So then we've got a question. Mayor, there is no greater advocate for our homeless friends as I am. Okay, spring and summer is here, and Tigard has gone above and beyond to make Tigard a walkable city by providing some beautiful paths. There are still many people that do not feel safe walking on our paths because of our homeless friends. 2 questions. What do you say to those that are afraid to enjoy the paths? And 2, what is Tigard doing to make the paths safe while at the same time being an advocate for our homeless friends? So this is a great balance question there. This is is a tough balance. The first thing I would say is that the vast majority of unhoused or homeless individuals are actually perfectly friendly, perfectly safe, and while they may make you somewhat uncomfortable, I would ask that you think a little bit more about that and what they're potentially doing, because their mere presence of walking or being in a space may make you uncomfortable. But think about that and think about what it would take to make you safe. If you were with 2 or 3 other people, would you feel safe? If you had if you knew Tigard Police was patrolling fairly regularly on our paths, would that move the needle for you? We are not at a place where, and we're never going to be in a place where we ban homelessness. It's an economic situation for people, and the vast majority are safe, friendly folks that have come in, either in hard times or are just struggling with having a house. What we're doing to make the paths safe and really to try to address homelessness all over, I kind of referenced a bit ago, but I can also tell you that Tigard PD has increased its presence in parks and on trails, and I think over the summer that will continue. So that's one of the things that we're doing. I have an idea, kind of a big idea that I've talked with some city staff about in the past around that would help make paths and trails safer for calling for help. And I don't know that idea is ready for prime time, but I do plan to readdress it with our leadership team as they kind of weren't terribly excited about it the first time I brought it up, but I think it's probably time for a revisit on that. Okay, Marianne Anderson, we've got a comment. Thank you for your leadership. Okay, thank you, Marianne. Appreciate that. John, thanks for answering my questions. All right. Cindy is asking, when will the police begin using body cameras? Great question, and something that we just funded kind of mid-budget year based on both feedback from the community. It was raised as a desire over a year ago, actually, even pre George Floyd, to be honest. It did not move forward in last year's budget and was not even brought to the budget committee last year by the leadership team. This year is a different scenario, and the Public Safety Advisory Board strongly supported body cameras. And I should also make sure everybody knows that it's not that we don't have that we haven't had body cameras for the police. We've had in-dash cameras for many of the police officers and in the police vehicles, and then canine officers, traffic officers, and the school resource officers all had body cameras. But those have kind of, the whole system has reached the end of its useful life. If you were to look at the quality of the cameras now compared to what's available now, a lot of this was purchased in the mid-2000s, so it's close to 15 years old, and a lot has advanced, as everybody knows. If you have a smartphone, you know what has happened to cameras and digital cameras in the last 15 years. And so there's just much better technology available and a system to support all of that. And so that has been funded. I think the chief has indicated that the thought is that will be being rolled out in the next coming months. So I would anticipate in the next 3 to 6 months that will be deployed. And I will ask staff, Cindy, to get you a specific answer, because I know there's a very specific timeline, but I don't have that memorized right here. So the police chief and other staff can provide you with that. All right, Beth is asking if there's an update on Steve Street. I do not have an update on Steve Street. We can get one from staff, so I'll ask our staff to get Beth an update. Beth, if you want to provide your contact info, if we don't already have it, you can send that in a private message to the city Facebook account, and we'll make sure we get you an updated answer on Steve Street. What other questions do you have, Tiger? Keep them rolling in. Oh, we got a question about the highlights for next year's budget. Well, you just heard me talk about body cameras. That's a change in the police department. We're also, I think other changes in the police department budget-wise were around jointly with Sherwood and Tualatin funding a mental health response unit. There's already one available in Washington County, but I think the idea would be that we would make, as a group of 3 cities, make that more accessible and available to our communities directly and not be so reliant. So kind of building that out. I think Hillsborough and Beaverton are working on something similar. So between the sheriff's office and Beaverton and Hillsborough and then the south cities, there would be, far more options there. Other highlights from the budget, we kind of, I would say, have made a commitment to figuring out park funding, and I think we've got a strategy there for more discussion. Trying to think of other highlights. I almost want, and maybe I'll ask the staff here to put a link to kind of the high-level summary of the budget and what was approved into the chat. And then we've got a question from Ann. Is the city planning more support for businesses impacted by COVID? So, Ann, the answer to that is that's actually one of the primary budget discussions was around the use of the American Rescue Plan funding and what should be prioritized. And I think our entire council and the budget committee was pretty vocal about making sure that both our residents that have been impacted the most and our businesses that have been impacted the most continue to be supported through the period that COVID is impacting them. And we remain committed to doing that. And the reason I raise that in the context of the American Rescue Plan is that is a significant amount of funding that we want to make sure is it can be used for many functions, but I think we view addressing the direct impacts of COVID for individuals and businesses as a primary responsibility. Kim is asking a question that I just started to answer before she even got her question up on my board here. So is Tigard getting American Rescue Plan funds? The answer is yes. There's been a little bit of maybe a question about how much we're getting, and that has to do with our status as a partial entitlement city, which is it's a fairly complex conversation about how we get or receive community development block grant funding, which is something the federal government issues to jurisdictions. And if you're a smaller city, then they issue that money to the county, and then all the smaller jurisdictions compete for the money. Well, the federal government is using that system to distribute money for the American Rescue Plan. And we, in Tigard right now, are we're like sitting on the fence with the Community Development Block Grant Program. To give kind of a short version of this, we are a partial entitlement city. And so the reason that all matters is it may mean the difference between us as a community receiving $11.3 million versus about $7.5 million. And we're still trying to sort through that. We'd originally been told by Congresswoman Bonamici and the League of Oregon Cities and others that we could expect that higher amount, $11.3 million. But we more recently were told that because we're in that weird partial entitlement status, that it may be less money by $4 million. It's a significant change. There was another question there, it looks like. Will the community have a chance to share input on the American Rescue Plan funds? We've actually been seeking that input. We asked the budget committee, the citizen members of the budget committee. We actually had an entire discussion centered around that. That was a public meeting that we asked for public comment on. You can write and provide that communication. If you have feedback now that you just want to provide, you can send that into the council email box that we all receive, or to me as mayor. My email address is very easy. It's jason@tiger-or.gov. And we would love to have your input. Ira is asking, can you share the latest on the investigation of the officer-involved shooting? I can share what I know, which is that about a week and a half ago, we received information with about a half an hour's notice that the Washington County District Attorney was going to be referring the investigation to the Oregon Attorney General's office. And I have not heard anything further. I actually asked the city attorney today if she could contact just to ask what kind of timeline we might expect. Like, could it be 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? Like, we don't really know. I sure hope it's not 2 years, but I have no way to know what the Oregon Attorney General's office is going to do or how timely they may be. And I would like to at least be able to share what they tell us. So I have asked for that, but don't have an answer yet. Irene, let's see. Parking with newly built multi-units is creating a problem because occupants have more than one car. How's the permits in building these multi-story multi-units being reviewed and approved? People are parking in Washington Square Mall and commercial parking lots. So we do have parking standards for new construction, and when new construction is reviewed, there's many different facets that are analyzed. The standard in higher density areas, or in areas that we plan to have more or are currently well served by transit in the future, there is the possibility of less parking being required. So if you want details, Irene, about the standards, be happy to provide those. I can have staff email those to you. Why don't you send us a private message about with your email address, and we'll make sure that our community development folks get back to you with details about how that review around parking requirements is done. Nancy says, I understand the Public Works building is moving. Where is it moving? I sure wish I knew the answer to that right now, but I don't, because we don't have a site finalized. There's a lot of effort that's going into trying to figure out where. I think as probably everyone in the community knows, having a public works yard in our downtown core is not a good use of space. It's taking up a lot of space. It's currently undersized for what Public Works actually needs. They need about 8 acres, and they're working on about 3 plus some contracted space right now that's sort of all over the place. So Nancy, I hope we have a more definitive answer for you soon, as a lot of active work is being done on that subject, but nothing specific at this point or anything definitive. We're getting a question from Jim. Are we still required to wear masks in parks? I do not believe the city has changed that requirement. I know the CDC guidance has changed very recently. And frankly, the state of Oregon and the Oregon Health Authority are who we're following direction from. So I would continue to direct you to the Oregon Health Authority about outdoor mask wearing. I suspect that in the next couple weeks, particularly for people that are fully vaccinated, that there may be a change in requirements around that, though I don't know for sure, because I think trying to figure out who's wearing a mask and is vaccinated versus who is not, I think is challenging. And so I've been wondering the same thing in the work environment too, is how that's going to work. But I think we'll learn more from the Oregon Health Authority very soon. What other questions? Tiger, you've done a good job of occupying our time for 25 minutes. Let's see if you can do it for a whole hour. What other questions or comments do you have? Anybody watch the State of the City address? I'd love to get feedback on any questions you have from the State of the City address, Late Night in Tigard, or any feedback for things we could do differently or improve, or even things you liked, then we'll make sure we do those again next year, or try to. What other questions or comments do we have?
We got a question about the ball field at Cook Park, and if that was a city project, the two new, I guess the baseball field, turf fields over down there.
Yeah, the turf fields at Cook Park. So that primarily was a city project, but it took a community to get it done, and Tigard Little League helped lead that effort. And I don't want to downplay that, but the city provided a significant portion of the project and did make it happen. Though I will share, and if you talk to the leaders at Tigard Little League, they will tell you that it almost didn't happen. So I don't say this lightly or very often, but I had to intervene a couple times to make sure it got done. There were some significant project hiccups, I would say, that had to get worked through. So does that cover the question about the turf fields? Okay. What other questions?
The next question we actually have from Michael Mentish, who says, we will be new residents soon to Tigard. I really like how you share information, looking forward to being part of the community. So I guess, Mayor, anything to share with Michael and soon to be Tigard resident?
Yeah, Michael, that's great. We are excited that you're coming, and I would just encourage you to get involved in our community. We have a very distinct community feel. We're a practical bunch. We like to have smart fun and joke around a little bit. That's kind of my way of describing our community culture. People are very open in their neighborhoods. I know COVID may make that a little different right this moment, but hopefully we'll be back to our normal Tigard selves. But even now you'll find people socially distanced, wearing masks out in their cul-de-sacs and in their neighborhood streets. And I would encourage you to make those connections as soon as you move into whatever neighborhood you're moving into, and make connections. And also just get involved. There's so much to get involved in, both city-wise and in our community, whether it's coaching youth sports or volunteering at the Tigard Public Library or for another part of the city. Just glad to have you, and let us know if there's anything the city can do to make your transition easier.
The next question is about the library and if they'll be extending their hours beyond what was just done with the in-building service.
I have no doubt that the answer to that question is yes. I think the question is when and how to do it safely. And I can make sure staff, if whoever wrote that question wants to provide their email address in a message, we can make sure that the library director, Halstead Bernard, gets back to you with the best information she has now. I know she's thinking about that continuously because she takes access to the library very seriously, as do I, and want to make sure that as many people can enjoy it as possible. But we got to continue to do that safely, and I'll make sure staff get back to you with that if you would like. Just provide us your info.
Michael, thanks you for your response to his question.
All right. Excellent, Michael. Look forward to meeting you someday when we can meet in person, perhaps. What else do we have? Any other questions rolling in?
We have a question about River Terrace and the latest on construction out in River Terrace.
Okay, that's a question about River Terrace and construction in River Terrace. That's a pretty broad topic. Could the person maybe let me know what their question is? I guess I can just talk about generalities, but
they mentioned the school
that's a big topic.
Oh,
Art Rutkin.
Yeah.
I think there was a groundbreaking ceremony today. I missed it because I was recording a podcast with Mayor Buck from Lake Oswego that was scheduled before the groundbreaking, but I believe it might have been every other member of the Tigard City Council was at the groundbreaking today. So I believe that that is an indication things are moving forward. So if that was the question, then I think we got that covered. If the question is about other things in River Terrace, just send in some more detail and I'll try to answer that as best I can.
Next question from Irene. How does the Supreme Court decision about landlords and evictions affect Tiger, creating a better management of landlords raising rents during a pandemic and ignoring any standards that Tiger has.
So most of landlord-tenant law is in Oregon state law and not in city code. So that question is probably more appropriately directed at the state and the state legislature. I guess maybe I missed the news today or in the last couple days about a Supreme Court decision about landlords. I don't, or about a landlord-tenant situation. I am not familiar with that, so it'd be hard for me to comment on it. But if you want to send in the details, I'd be happy to look at it and be prepared next month to try to answer that. Staff, if we do receive that, please forward it on to my city email address. I'd be happy to look at it, give my take, and maybe get the city attorney to weigh in on it as well. What other questions?
Topic, this month is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Any comments on that and what we're doing to recognize that community?
Well, I just want to emphasize that Tigard, and I think the whole council for the last couple of years has been really emphasizing that Tigard is a community for all, and we mean that, and we don't just say it in words, we act that way. And that really means a community for all. And I think it's really important to recognize various groups throughout months as they're celebrating their heritage, and certainly want to wish our Asian Pacific Islander residents and communities a happy recognition of the Heritage Month this month. And thank you for being part of our community. We have strong representation in many key city groups and city committees from that area, and I just want to thank you for being here. And there are many groups in our country that I feel like at various points in time have been not treated like they should have been. And there's a very obvious time in our country's history around World War II that I think is it's an embarrassment to our country and our beliefs and ideals. And certainly what went on in the history of slavery is similarly abhorrent and not consistent with our beliefs as a country. And so I think I'll leave it at that. What other questions or comments are we getting?
We're all caught up for now.
We're caught up. It's 7:04, Tiger. You got 25 more minutes of grilling if you want. If you don't want, I'll let you get back to your evening, but I'm here for you. But you got to keep making comments or asking questions. I'll give you another 30 seconds or so. Get them rolling in. I'll do a pitch to remind you to vote again. Please, May 18th. At this point, no mailing. You need to drop your ballots off at City Hall. Would again encourage you to vote yes on the urban renewal substantial amendment that we have on the ballot. The City Council spent a lot of time thinking through and preparing that, and it does not raise taxes, and it gets good things done in your community. Any final questions?
No, we're all caught up.
We're all caught up. Okay, Tigard, I tried, but I don't have any further questions or comments for you. So we will see you next month. Good night, Tigard.